Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Legacy. My name's Noah Mitchell and I'm the Senior Learning Experience Designer here at Legacy FM. And this week, I want to talk about something new that I learned. It's a concept that I had never heard about before, and yet it was a concept that I realized that I am guilty of doing. And so this term or this concept is called toxic positivity. And I know that in today's world, we're learning a lot more about ourselves. Cultures are changing, and so technology is also advancing. So there are a lot of new terms and acronyms and phrases popping up. And so toxic positivity was one of those where I'm like, what exactly does that mean? You know, I can kind of get an idea right off the bat. You know, we know that something toxic is not good. And in today's culture, if something or someone is being toxic, then they're really just they're being so detrimental to other people in a way that it affects everyone around them in a negative way. And so toxic positivity then must be being so positive that it actually is having a detrimental effect on everyone else. That was my thought process though. And so whenever I did a little bit of research and looked into it, that's sort of what it's saying. But really what it gets at the heart at is being so overly positive that you are refusing, whether consciously or unconsciously, to at least recognize and empathize with other people's situations because you can't fathom a situation that isn't positive. There's always some positive outlook. Now, I want to start by saying that that's not necessarily a bad thing. Whenever I look at toxic positivity, and this is probably my own bias, I 100% admit that. When I look at toxic positivity, I think, well, it's probably on like a case-to-case basis because I'm not opposed to, being positive in a situation. For example, recently, I've had a lot of complications from my spinal stenosis. And so I'm in a lot of pain all of the time. And I admit it's hard sometimes to be positive, but I find myself saying, you'll get this, you'll be able to get through this, think happy thoughts, or it could be worse. And what's funny is I'm looking over at my screen right now. Those are some of the phrases that fit under the umbrella of toxic positivity. However, I don't think that I'm being toxically positive with myself because I also know what's going on in my body and I'm not ignoring the bad things that are happening. I'm addressing those too. So that's sort of my 2 cents on it. But what I brought up on my screen here, I'll put it on the screen so you all can see it as well, is a picture I found on Quora. It was posted by an anonymous poster, so I would give credit if I could. I have no clue who you are, and I don't know where the image came from. However, that being said, it's a really nice visual of like how to avoid toxic positivity. And so some of the things it has in the left-hand column, as you can see here, is that, saying something to someone like, yeah, well, you'll get over it, or don't be so negative all the time, or look at the bright side. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. I don't know why you're complaining so much. So things like that, you can already see how that gets toxic over time. If I had someone coming to me, now that I think about it, and like the first thing I say is, yeah, that sucks, but you'll get over it. Or yeah, I went through that too, but I promise you'll get over it. And hey, look on the bright side. It could be worse. A lot of times, and I'm not saying that we do that. Again, this could be consciously or unconsciously. I think most of us, we're toxically positive. And yes, I think all of us are guilty. I think most of us, we're toxically positive unconsciously. We're trying to be helpful. I don't think that we're intentionally trying to hurt someone. I think a lot of times it could be because we don't know what to say. I think a lot of times it could be that we're so busy that we feel like we don't have time to really come up with a good, meaningful response. And I also think that maybe we're just uncomfortable and we don't know, again, what to say. So we come up with, something like this, these like generic responses to people, right? And so that's that toxic positivity, because like we're not trying to help the person. We're not even really listening to the person, what they're saying, what they're going through, trying to understand that situation and to empathize with them. And I think that's where it really creeps in, and that's where people get hurt. So I really liked this image. I'm going to bring it up again just now. So I really like this image because now in the other column, you see that, well, instead of saying you'll get over it, let's try to say something like, I know it's hard, but I have faith in you, or I believe in you. And it's cool because you are saying the same thing. So it's really hard for someone like me even to justify saying you'll get over it versus this other phrase. And so let's go to the next one. Don't be so negative. Well, instead of saying that, let's shift it toward a more positive tone and say, like, it's okay to feel bad sometimes. It's hard. And again, move up another bullet point there. I believe in you, though. It's hard. I believe in you. It's okay to feel bad sometimes. But, I think that you'll be able to get through this over time, and we'll figure it out. And so you can see some of these other ones. I think they're great. I really like the last one too. So like, well, things could be worse. Of course they could be worse. And again, context by context, it would depend on whether or not you should or could say something like that. But I still would argue, if you can say it could be worse, you could also say, sometimes we experience bad things. Sometimes bad things happen. How can I support you? I'm here for you. Things can get really tough. And that's the bullet point above. So I love it. I don't know. I'm super guilty of this. I'm the first to admit it, but I discovering this and thinking about it, I have this opportunity that I find myself with to change the way that I respond to people. And I think what this has taught me is even more so to, again, in any situation, no matter what it is, take a step back and think about how the other person is feeling. And what's cool is that ties into even what I do as an instructional designer or a learning experience designer. A lot of times we have to take a step back and think, what is it that we want them to be able to do? And then how are they feeling? What's their work-life balance like? Or what are their pain points at work? So it's really cool to see that overlap, that this wouldn't just apply to one context or one domain. This can really apply across the board. And it just gets at the idea of like, being positive all the time can be harmful to people because you're not taking time to actually listen to what's going on with them. And sometimes people just need someone to listen. Sometimes we don't need someone to talk. And again, guilty, but sometimes we need that person to not say anything and just listen. And then maybe at the end, then to like validate the feelings, because we want to know that we're not alone. And that validation is part of the healing process. That being said, if someone's doing something that's clearly detrimental to themselves and to others, don't let them get by on that, I guess is what I'm saying. You shouldn't validate those feelings. And there are several things I could talk about, but I don't, want to go down that rabbit hole. But, so if they're hurting themselves or they're hurting others, obviously we're not going to validate those behaviors. But with something real, maybe they're struggling at work and it's been really hard. We've all had those times. Constantly, where we're trying to meet a project and meet that tough or strict deadline and we don't know if we're going to make it. That leads to a lot of frustration. That leads to a lot of anxiety and sometimes can even make you feel sad because you start questioning your own abilities. And then to have somebody to just come by and say, well, don't be so negative. You'll get over it. That is like the least helpful thing to say. So yeah, that's all I've got for you today. I love whenever I get to learn things like this because it helps me to reassess, who I am, and just in those moments, think about what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do. So maybe the next time that you're having a conversation with someone and they're not feeling well, they're not feeling good about a situation, as long as it's not a situation that's where they're actively trying to hurt themselves or others, take a moment to step back and think, what are some other are some uplifting and validating things that I could say to them instead of some of the more generic responses that don't really help and actually make things worse. So anyway, like I said, that's all I've got for you all. I hope you have an awesome Friday and an awesome weekend. I would love some commentary in the comments below so we can start a conversation, but otherwise, we'll see you next time.